Ryan Elliott for ID Boxing. We're in San Antonio. It's fight night with me, Chris Algieri. Chris, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Calling great fights and now watching some great fights.
We'll get down to it. Obviously, by the time this goes out, we won't know what's happened with Bam, but just to talk about Bam Rodriguez, obviously headlining tonight. Seemed like he had a chip on his shoulder going into this fight after being criticised in his last fight, but 23 years old, could be a two-weight world champion. Do you think he's been a bit harsh on himself?
Yes and no. I mean, no, because that's what's going to push him to excel and to, you got to have a chip on your shoulder if you're going to be multiple division world champion, which I do believe he will be. And then also, yes, because, the kid had such a sterling year. He had two wonderful performances and then one that was not as good as the other ones. It's still a good win. Still, a win is a win. And now he's moved down a weight class to a much more comfortable weight class, most likely. And but good. The chip is good. I want to see it in the ring, though.
The talk all week is if he comes through this, Sonny Edwards will await him. They've both been very vocal about wanting that fight. Two undefeated young world champions. Brilliant fight. Who do you give the edge to?
It's hard for me to go against anything against Bam. I mean, the kid is super phenomenal. He's getting better all the time. The way he cuts his angles, the way he throws his punches, the way he picks his shots, his punch selection is amazing. But I got to see him at this weight first. I got to see him how he's going to look down here. I do believe this is his more natural weight, but you never know how someone's going to perform until they do.
Chris, I believe by the time this goes out, Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez will be announced for June 10th at Madison Square Garden. Brilliant fight. Who you got?
I like that fight a lot. I like Taylor on size and strength, but I like Teo because of the injury of Taylor. That foot injury is no joke, and he hasn't fought at 140 in a long time. So I know making weight is tough. He's very big for the weight class. He didn't know how long he was going to be staying there. Add a foot injury on top of that, making weight's going to be real tough. So if he's healthy, I like Taylor. If he's injured, I like Teo.
How much do you think it'll play a part that, Josh Taylor, you mentioned the inactivity, but you so aggravated after the Jack Catterall fight, really disappointed, and seems like he's had a point to prove for a while now. Do you think that'll show?
I mean, I hope so. Talk about someone who fights with a chip on his shoulder. He's kind of always fought like that, and to his advantage. So hopefully he uses that energy and brings it to the ring on fight night, or uses it in training camp. So he is 100% prepared, because Teofimo Lopez is one of the most phenomenal talents in those light divisions. So it's a real test.
Chris, I've got to get your reaction. Your former opponent, Amir Khan, received a 2-year ban from UKAD the other day for a post-fight test after the Kell Brook fight. This is the second Brit that you fought that has gone on to fail a test. How do you feel when you see things like that?
I mean, I've said it on my podcast, Inside Boxing Live. I've said it on shows before. There's a lot of drug use in this sport, PEDs. It's very unfortunate. Myself as a clean athlete who competed at the highest levels and made it all the way there clean. My friends who work in sports science don't even understand how I was able to get so far as I did, as clean as I was. So, it's an unfortunate part of the sport, but it's something that will always be present in sports. Guys are always going to look for an advantage. There's a lot of money involved. So, and with testing and the drugs that are coming out, there's a lot more money in making designer drugs that aren't tested that couldn't be found in tests than it is to make tests that can do the job. So. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's the unfortunate aspect of this sport, because it's such a dangerous sport, and we die all the time, and the damage is permanent for many people. So, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Like I say, the second time for you now where later on an opponent's gone on to test positive. What needs to change, though? Because it feels like, Conor Bennett's still rumbling on. Amir Khan, we didn't find out for over a year. Changes need to be made.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's coming out now about Amir Khan and the fight, it's like... I mean, it's been a year. He's retired. It's just it's silly. I don't know. I don't know what needs to be done in order to make things right. But sweeping changes are necessary.
Do you think as well that the footsteps with this was UKAD rather than VADA, but the fact that Kell Brook didn't know for all that time is sickening?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're fighting a guy who's advanced, or he's got an advantage. I mean, it's just but listen, I mean, like I said, it's always been part of the sport. Unfortunately, I don't see anything changing very soon.
Couple quick fights before I let you go. We've got Garcia coming up in a couple of weeks. Terrific fight. Who you got and why?
Love that fight. I switch my mindset all the time about it, because going back and forth. I'll probably finally know who I think is gonna win the day of. But I've been going with Tank lately. I think Tank late just makes the most sense in my head. But then my heart goes a lot with Ryan because he's so talented. He's got that one-punch power. So it's really going to be decided, I think, early on. If Ryan can get to Tank and hurt him and get some respect, I think we have a real fight on our hands. Otherwise, I think Tank late.
Similarly, say it quietly, we might get Spence Crawford. The right noises are being made. I know no one wants to get their hopes up just yet, but if it does happen, what do you think will be the difference between them? Really hard fight to call.
It's getting harder to call. It was hard to call when they were talking about a year and a half ago. Now it's like there's so many question marks because of the inactivity of both men, the injuries sustained by Spence outside the ring. So I don't know. I'm less inclined to lean in either direction now than I've ever been.
All right, Chris, thank you for making time for ID Boxing. We'll catch you soon.